Greetings and welcome to the Stoic Gamer podcast. My name's Michael Bolton. In this podcast, I talk to players at all different levels of the hobby about their experience going to competitive events, whether it's their first time or whether they're a seasoned old timer like myself. I discuss the events we're going to, I discuss the events we've been to, and I talk about everything from army building, rules queries, happenings on the table to hotel disasters and culinary and gastronomic accidents, all part of the hobby and all part of visiting different parts of the country and the world as part of our fantastic 40k hobby. If you like this kind of content and you want to hear more, please let me know. If it's on YouTube, please just leave something in the comments. I'll always get back to you if I can. And if you're listening on any other kind of platform such as Spotify, do leave me a message. I can get back. Well, I'd like to welcome Vik to the Stoic podcast because he's going to tell us all about his work trying to organise a Necron's list. Vik, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. No, I'm very, very excited to be on here with this very cool kind of almost ingenious exercise that you've come up with.
Well, let's see what the listener thinks about it. Okay, so just for those of you who have skipped ahead, what we've decided to do is I'm going to ask some of the best players in the country to design a list, and I'm going to compare it to my list, and we'll see how the workings of a competitive brain work with the workings of an elderly and stoic gamer's game, and see if we have a similar list. Now, the only fly in the ointment for all of this is that I'm going to insist that we include a particular unit in every episode just to add a little bit of spice. So in this particular episode, Vik is going to develop a Necron list including the Silent King, as am I, and we'll see how that comparison goes. So Vik, with your permission, I'm going to start off with the first Necron in my Necron list, and I'm going to just work down the list. Please join in and tell me if it's something that you've got, if it's something you haven't, and what you think about it as a choice. So the first one I'm going to put in is a Catan Shard of the Nightbringer.
Would you believe, in the very first list I made, of course I included the Catan Shard of the Nightbringer. It's the best one, isn't it? Yeah. And it's just great value. But actually, the more I thought about it, and maybe the design philosophies behind is a very interesting thing to talk about. As I went through the process, and then I had to include, your special unit in this list, I actually decided to drop the Nightbringer. So I have no Catan in my list.
Oh, now this is interesting already. I wish...
Let's start off strong.
The amount of flack I get from all of my gaming group about using Catans is astonishing. So I'm interested about that. So I'm assuming that you don't feel you need it because you've got the Silent King in there.
So there are two kind of main reasons. One is I wanted to think about what my goals were for with this list. Am I taking it to a tournament? Am I going to my local gaming scene, etc.? And if I am going to a tournament, which is the route I went down, what am I aiming for? What's my result? I have never played Necrons in my life. I'm picking up this army. My friend Dave said, Vik, you know what? You have to use Necrons this week. Okay, Dave. I will make this list to try and do as best as I can, and realistically, I think I'm probably going to, try and aim to lose one game and go 4-1. I think so that's reason number one. This is my kind of aim. The reason why I dropped the Nightbringer from the list is that I think a lot of people, when they're building their lists at the moment, are thinking, how do I kill a Catan?
Yeah.
And what profiles work really well against the Catan? And I think everyone is including tools that are more efficient against Catan than if Catan weren't kind of a meta pick in the game. So is it actually going to work out as the optimal choice cutting the Catan? Hard to tell, but I think the fact that we had to have quite a big centerpiece model in this list, dropping the Catan is probably the correct way to go. In an ideal world, I probably would have dropped the centerpiece rather than the Catan Nightbringer.
Yeah.
But in this case, I've dropped the Nightbringer, Mike.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And frankly, I had a little... I couldn't let go of it. It's like a crutch to me. So I've kept it, even though I've usually used 3 Catans, and I've dropped 2 for the very same reasons you've described to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, I'm taking the Hypercrypt Legion. Which Legion did you choose?
I have gone Hypercrypt as well.
Excellent, excellent. So you're going to be, like me, looking at tactical objectives, I suspect.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, I think Necrons are very strong. So they do have the ability to kill stuff as well. I think generally, yes, you're right. Tactical objectives are going to be the way to go. But I think if someone does give up a kill secondary, I have a feeling that, this army can play deploy Telebo homers very well and can kill stuff. So I could see me taking fixed when the opportunity presents itself.
Okay, well, that's interesting because one of the things I've noticed playing Necrons for a while is that they struggle to kill things. Their damage output isn't as exciting as I'd like it to be. So I've faced Custodes, for example, and I don't think Necrons can beat Custodes. I just don't think they can do it.
Oh, yeah, it's a slightly tricky match. It depends how far you skew against them and what your actual strategy is in the game. There are armies like Custodes, Orcs, World Eaters that apply a lot of pressure and kind of run forward at you. And the key aim, and Custodes is the worst one because they're the toughest, right? The key aim is to try not to get hit on all fronts at the same time. I think armies like Hypercrypt, kind of elite, very mobile armies, are very good at just locking down a small section of the board and picking apart these kind of pressure armies slowly. So while I think it's going to be an absolute grind, you're going to be spending 4 out of the 5 turns trying to establish your space on the board. I think there is a path to victory with these kinds of armies, possibly.
Okay. Well, look, my next HQ choice was a Hexmark Destroyer.
Oh, I haven't got one. I had one and I haven't got one.
Oh, that's the second time you've done that too.
Yes, I thought about it and then I was just like, oh, the assassinate count is really ramping up here. Let's go for two other little units.
Exactly. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll go through my characters and then you go through yours. Okay.
Sure.
So I've got the Nightbringer. I've got a Hexmark Destroyer. I've got a Locust Lord. And he's got an enhancement, the Dimensional Overseer, which is simply the ability to have an additional hyperphasing unit.
Yes, that's right.
And then I've got a Technomancer with a hyperspatial transfer node, which is the one for the automatic 6-inch advance.
Nice.
And then the Silent King. Those are my characters. And let me tell you why I've got them. The Nightbringer, because he's 255 points for a very difficult, tough unit. That's as simple as that. The Hexmark Destroyer, because I hate Eldar, and I've got a couple of units in my list that are able to deep strike and really worry 5-man small Eldar units. So he can, he's hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s against most Eldar. He's going to make a mess of a 5-man squad of, I don't know, what have you got? Warp Spiders or what are those things with spears that leap about? The
Shadow Spectres.
Yeah, them. Well, you're the expert, not me. The Locust Lord, I have put him in because I've also included some 6 Locust Destroyers later on because I'm conscious that I don't have much damage output. And if I put a Lord with them, they suddenly start to become quite scary, especially if I can put them somewhere near the Silent King. And so they're not halving their damage against things like, I don't know, other Catans, for example, or not -1 damage against Dreadnoughts and things like that.
Yes, that
So,
makes sense.
and then the Technomancer, guess where he's going to be? Guess who he's going to be hiding with?
Got a cheeky unit of Wraiths.
Oh, there you go. It's almost so predictable. I do apologise, Vic.
Well, we've gone absolutely different. Like, we're so different here. It's brilliant.
Tell me what you've got and why.
So I've gone for... So, wait, you mentioned the Silent King. The listeners know we have the Silent King in the list, right?
Yes, they do. And that's
Perfect.
just to make things a little bit more challenging for people as much as anything else.
Well, that's cool because the Silent King has a decent indirect fire gun.
It does.
So we're really raining on Eldar's parade here with this list. So
Yep.
I've gone for a Chronomancer with the Osteoclave Fulcrum, which is the Deep Strike one.
Yeah.
I've gone for another Chronomancer with Dimensional Overseer, the same one that you had.
Yeah.
And I've gone for a Plasmancer with Arisen Tyrant, which gives kind of rerolls to hit when the unit is set up. And then I've got Illuminoceras as well inside there. So.
I like him.
So I've built around what I think is one of the strongest units in Necrons, which is the Immortals. And I've got 3 times 10 Immortals to go with those characters and Illuminous Xeros working
Yeah.
around them as well.
Yeah.
My theory behind that was I'm generally quite a defensive player. I'm a full-on singles player, really, because my play style is to try and win by 1 or 2 points and just try and calculate my way to victory towards the end of the game. And units that don't die but can still like activate are units I love. So having the Chronomancers be able to shoot and then jump back behind a wall is something that I immediately gravitate towards because I think it's a very good way of developing momentum in your army. And so I've kind of lent into that a little bit. I've got the one Plasmancer unit just for the increased output if I need it on one unit. To be honest, that probably should be just another Chronomancer in my opinion, for me. I think being able to deep strike 3 inches and then kind of jump back 5 inches is so incredibly strong compared to just slightly increasing the output.
That's so interesting. I've used that Chronomancer with a unit of Immortals at a couple of events, a couple of tournaments now, and it's been so hard to get them in a position where they can actually do what you want them to do, even when I'm hyper-phasing them around the table. Because people know what I'm trying to do, so there's always somebody who can get an angle on wherever I want to move afterwards.
Right, fair enough. No,
What I
That's
did
my lack of
find,
experience,
and this was interesting, especially watching Matt play in the finals at LVO. What he was using the Immortals for was that extra 5 inches to deep strike in 3 inches and then move and steal or flip an objective off somebody.
Yes.
And that was really powerful. And I haven't got any Immortals in my army.
Oh, whoa, we're so different here.
Let me tell you why. I've replaced the Immortals with a couple of small units of Tomb Blades, because Tomb Blades move 6 inches after they've shot.
Yes.
So what I'm hoping to do with those is exactly what Matt Laura was doing at the LVO. Bring them on from reserve, shoot something, and then put 6 OP onto an objective, and hopefully with a little bit of combination of shooting previously, steal an objective off people.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I've played a game against Hypercrypt, against Chris Kinnair, and right when it first came out, so his kind of initial version of his list, and he pulled that trick off against me for the first 2 turns, like twice in a row. And it was with Tomb Blades, so I definitely see it, and I think it's one of the strongest strats in this army.
Well, for me, I was looking at a 210-point Immortal list with the character or so and an enhancement, or a 75-point Tomb Blade unit. And I thought, well, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try it and see how it goes.
Nice, I like it. So go more MSU, but achieving the same result.
We've already given people a hint of what might be in our next tranche of units. Tell me what's in your battle line. Is it just the 3 units of Immortals, Vic?
Yes, just 3 units of 10 Immortals for me.
Okay, well, as I've indicated, I've got no battle line troops. None at all. So tell me what else you've got. This is where it's going to get... I'm sure we'll drift apart, and now I'm going to feel very... if you're going to have one kind of design and mine doesn't look anything like yours, I'm going to feel incredibly insecure.
Well, I've included some chaff in my list because I think it works so well with this detachment, and I've gone for 3 single Locust Destroyers, only 30 points. They're excellent.
Yep.
Yep. I've only got 2 other units in my list, Mike.
Go on.
I've just got 2 monoliths.
No. Really?
Yes, I've got 2 monoliths because I think they sit so incredibly well in this meta. And the whole army builds around them, and I think they synergize very well with the Silent King as well.
Explain that to me, because I dropped my monolith from this list, so we...
What's going on? So my experience looking at the competitive scene and how Necron designs have kind of developed from the outside as a person who doesn't play Necrons is that I initially saw people laugh at the monolith when it first came out. The Hypercrypt, they looked at it, okay, yeah, don't do the monolith, just go for 5 Catan, 4 Catan, whatever ridiculous lists Necron players run these days. And then after a short period of time, I saw 1 monolith start to pop up in a list. And then I saw 2. I swear the other day I saw a person run 3.
Yeah.
And what it does is it answers a lot of stuff in the meta. For example, if we take Guard, which is probably one of the strongest armies in terms of its matchups in the singles tournament, Guard don't mind the Catan. They slightly struggle against it, but they can deal with it.
Yeah.
But 2+ monoliths is something Guard incredibly struggle against. And that can almost just win you the game just like that. I think also, if you're not very experienced with a faction or a list, sometimes doing a little bit of stat checking can just help you kind of have a better overall result at a tournament.
Yeah.
And also, the monolith is the linchpin of a lot of stratagems in this list. And having 2, it means you have a bit of redundancy there as well. That was my thinking.
Okay. I think I may be psychologically traumatized. I fought an Eldar list about a month ago, and he had a couple of fire prisms.
Yeah.
In one shot, despite my 4-up invulnerable save, I failed all my saves. He made all his hits. He used his fate dice to do maximum damage, and he killed my monolith dead. First time he got a shot at it.
Yeah.
Now, that's why I've taken mine out. Now, that does mean, as you so rightly pointed out, only 2 of the stratagems I can actually use, because the others all revolve around either a Titanic model or the monolith itself. My question for you, though, is how are you going to score with 3 units of Immortal? Essentially, you've got 3 units of Immortals buffed by Seraz, so they're getting the extra CP, the extra AP when they're shooting, and essentially they're getting Armor of Contempt when anybody targets them if they're within 3 inches of him. But you've only got 2 monoliths. How are you gonna score the secondaries?
So, in terms of secondaries, you need to consider which ones are possibly going to come up. There are a couple of killy ones, like 3 or 4 killy ones, and then there's some that you need to play in the corners, so you easily have access to that with Hypercrypt. You also have behind enemy lines. It's very hard to block out one Locust Destroyer without exposing yourself.
Yep.
And then the majority of the rest are playing onto objectives or on the midboard. I actually think this list can do that really nicely, because it does move into the midboard and force your opponent, if they want to engage with the list, to actually put themselves in quite bad positions.
Yeah.
Nothing in this list dies easily except for the Locust Destroyers. The Immortals are an absolute pain to shift with -1 to hit and then -1 AP.
Yeah.
And if you shoot them, they bounce over to the monolith on the other side, which, could get you some extra primary all of a sudden,
Did you give them... I'm assuming you've got 1 unit with Tesla with the Plasmancer and the others have got Gauss Blasters. Is that what you've given them?
I've just gone all Tesla. I don't know if that's correct, but I just looked at the profiles and the Tesla seemed the correct way to go. Is Gauss Blasters the way people are running them?
Yeah, you're probably going to be able to get re-roll your hits and or your wounds, so there's going to be a lot of saves to be made.
Gauss Blaster. Oh, yes, I see it. Yeah, maybe the Ghost Blaster, you could take that as well. You get the AP2 on that. That's quite nice.
Yeah. But the -1 to hit is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fought a Tau army a couple of weeks ago at the battlefield Birmingham, and I stood a unit of Immortals on the centre of the in turn 4 on the central objective. And I think he shot his entire army at me, by which time he hadn't got as much left as he started with. But they stood there for the last 2 turns, lost 3 or 4 models each turn, but they were still there at the end of the game, which is astonishing.
Yeah, they're really deceptively tanky, to be honest. I would have loved to have got a Canoptech Reanimator in this list and just really double down on the combo.
Yeah, but... and you can place that somewhere near a monolith, and then when you pull your guys back through the Eternity Gate at the monolith, they're going to be next to the Reanimator for the reanimating session in their next command phase.
Absolutely. There's so many cool combos you can do. I think it's a good primary control army. And I think just having 3 little Locust Destroyers, and then, you can throw away an Immortal unit as well if you want, just to keep up your secondary score. I think it should score pretty decently.
I like it. Now, do you feel there's any issue I know we can hyperphase the monoliths around. Do you feel there's any issue in terms of moving them around the table? Because they're titanic and they're pretty damn big, and most tournaments tend not to have. Well, some of them it's more difficult than others to move them around.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think UKTC is one of the worst ones for moving them around. So, yeah, it's not great. I mean, being able to hyperphase really helps. Titanic now, I mean, Towering now lets you kind of like just touch terrain and see over it, which also helps quite a bit. So I think it's manageable. I think 3 is a real stretch, but I think 2, you could find a way of making it work. You've just got to have your overall game plan really in your head when you're playing this army, because you actually don't have that many resources to work with.
Well, the irony is, I've got all those models. I could put that list together.
Oh, there you go.
But
imagine if it's good.
Well,
Maybe it is.
what do you mean? Imagine? I look at it and it's some. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me tell you what's in mine, and it's a much more conventional build, I think, than yours. So I've got in my list 6 wraiths to go with the Technomancer. The plan there is that they can't, in this legion, they can't infiltrate, but if I give them the hyperspatial transfer node, they get to move 14 in the first turn. So if they'll probably be able to get it on an objective. They don't do a lot of damage. They're definitely there to hold an objective. Then I've got 2 units of 5 death marks that are mission play, just to move around, drop into corners to do missions. I've got 10 flayed ones because they are surprisingly good at the end game. They hide. They spend most of the game sort of lurking around in the midfield and then pounce on things at the last minute. I've got 3 heavy destroyers as a single unit because I struggle in the past against armoured vehicles and big monsters. So they can come on, get an angle on things and kill something with a bit of luck. I've got 6 Locust Destroyers who go with the Locust Lord. And the idea there is that they get the reroll ones to hit naturally. So they don't really have to be next to the Silent King unless I want to get that aura of not halving wounds. The one that they've just clarified in the latest... what's it called?
Designer commentary.
Yeah, that's where you don't, the things that Catans don't like. So I mean, they're only strength 5. They're -2 damage, but they're lethal hits, and I can get them to re-roll all of their hits, and I can get them to re-roll all of their wounds. So all of a sudden, that starts to do some damage. And my feeling is that against a Catan, they should be doing 9 or 10 wounds a turn, which is pretty good. It used to be 4 or 5 when they were halving them, but now they're not. It makes a big difference. Then I've got 2 units of 3 Tomb Blades to do the little shizzle that we talked about. Of course, just as a little gamesmanship, of the 3, one of them has got a Tesla carbine so that it can advance and still shoot its weapon, so it can do actions, which is a bit cheesy. And finally, the most expensive unit in my army is 5 Triarch Praetorians.
Whoa.
I know. They're 120 for 5, Vic.
What do they do?
Well, what they do is they kill 5-man units that are jumping around behind my lines. They've got... they're a jump infantry. They move 10 inches. They have 3-shot pistols, strength 5 or 6, 0 AP, but do devastating wounds. And they get 15 shots there. And then on the charge, they get 4 attacks, -2, 1 damage. But they reroll all their charges and they can fall back and shoot and charge. So they're expensive. But against, again, if I can use them in the hypercrit using against something like Eldar, they should be taking out a unit in shooting, never mind anything else. And they've got 2 chances to roll a 9 to charge in afterwards.
They're quite cool. I won't lie.
Yeah, they're too expensive. If I was talking to Games Workshop now, I'd be saying, they're how much are they each? They're 30 points each or something stupid. And they're only a 3-up save. There's no invulnerable involved. So,
yeah.
But the plan is Deathmarks, Hexmark Destroyer, Praetorians. They can all deal with the Eldar threat, as can the 12 indirect shots from the Silent King. So
No,
I'm not too worried about the traditional Eldar unit with all of the little units. I don't think we're going to see that many Wraith Guard units with guns anymore. Do you think they're going to be around, or do you think they're
not with
consigned
the
to the dustbin of history now?
I think people are more likely to take the ones with the axes and shields.
Yeah.
I'm actually running a Wraith Knight this weekend. Would you believe?
A Wraith Knight?
A Wraith Knight. It's all gone back around.
Have you gone completely mad, or is there some?
2 monoliths, a Wraith Knight. What's going on?
You've just got a big model fixation, haven't you?
What's
now
happening? It's the opposite of what I usually do. But I have to say, I think the thing I've missed in my list design compared to yours is that I really like that destroyer unit. I think you found a good synergy with the Silent King there to keep them at 2 damage against certain targets, and they're just an output unit that can jump around nicely for you, always applying threat, like your opponent has to watch out for it.
Yeah.
I like that.
But it takes a good player. I mean, I'm not a good enough player, because the way to position it is, because it has such a big footprint, because it's 7 models and they're all on the big 60mm bases. It takes, if you can place them so they're within 6 inches of your Silent King, but stretch out so that they're in the right place to do whatever they need to do, it takes up a lot of table, and I think I think they're well worth having. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and see how it goes.
Yes.
So I don't know what to say now. I'm going to ask you to hold on for just a second while I download this little
Sure.
bit. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
And then we can round up with a few thoughts. Yeah, my microphone is from Etsy, so things don't work as well as they should. So I have gone the opposite way to you. I've gone for MSU army, essentially, which is ironic because I've got a massive Silent King and a Nightbringer in it. But I've managed to fit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 units. And I'm looking at yours with 3...
I've got
4,
6
5, 6,
plus
8,
Luminous Arrows.
8. Oh, and Seraz 9.
9, yeah.
That's not bad.
I've got a few, but everything has a very specific role, except the Immortals, and the Immortals are the answer to all the problems.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can't really rely on their output to like destroy units or things, but they can chip away, and then they can also score primaries and secondaries. So they're an expendable resource, that also provides a little bit of chip damage. I think the interesting thing is the damage profiles that we have in our lists. You've got the 3 heavy destroyers as a bit of anti-tank, but actually you're kind of low on the anti-tank side of things. So if you come up against an army that is just like a lot of vehicles in front of you, it might be a bit of a challenge. You're really relying on the Nightbringer and that 1 unit of heavy destroyers. I don't know what you think about that.
You're right, but the Silent King can do a number on things as well, as long as his Menhirs are still alive. And the normal Locust Destroyers, funnily enough, with lethal hits, if I can get them to re-roll the 1s, which they do naturally, if they're near the Silent King, they'll be re-rolling 1s to wound. I'll just be re-rolling everything if I get the chance. And don't forget the Locust Lord means that they have lethal hits on 5s, not 6s.
Nice.
So against a lot of vehicles, they can probably take a 12 wound unit vehicle out reasonably easily if I position correctly, which is the big issue.
It's hard. So many big units.
Yeah, but I'm taking this. I'm playing at the weekend. I'm playing at where am I going? I'm going to a 1-dayer at the Warlords in Birmingham.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's on Sunday, and I'm going to take this list that I've been discussing with you, and I shall let you know how it goes.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be at Goonhammer with my Aeldari.
Oh, it's Leicester.
Leicester, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But because they're using GW terrain, so that's something quite different. So I thought, let me go for an Avatar and a Wraith Knight in the list. Just move around some big stuff and take advantage of the terrain a little bit. So
Yeah, it tends to be just big blocks of terrain and plenty of room to move around between them.
right, and monsters and stuff can just move over these smaller sections in between the terrain. So
Yeah, I went last year and I remember I fought 2 Eldar armies. And it was before all the nerfs, and one of them had the 2 Wraith Knights with all the devastating wounds.
well, fortunately, they're much worse now, and I'm using the Skatak Wraith Knight as well. Not even the normal one. I'm using the one with the jump pack on the back of it.
What are you going? Well, I'm not even going to. I'm very keen to know how you get on. I'm expecting a podium finish with.
This could go horribly wrong.
So, my little experiment seems to have identified the fact that either I am not very good at designing lists and we've got very different ones, or, and this is what I'm hoping for, the Necron Codex actually is pretty well balanced and has some kind of internal balance that allows you to produce different kinds of potentially good lists.
Definitely. And I think a lot of these indexes that we have at the moment allow players to express their play style and some of their kind of creativity with their list design. Because, sure, you might end up taking the same core units, like 1 or 2 units that are really good, like the Nightbringer, for example. But I think a lot of other options are very flexible depending on what kind of game plan you're trying to do. And Necrons really exemplify that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Codex. All my friends take the mickey terribly and say that it's as bent as a bent thing, but I'm not. I'm looking at the results over the last couple of weeks, and I'm not seeing Necrons winning an enormous amount, not a disproportionate amount anyway. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, people are really considering them when they're building their armies. Like, I'd say it's almost the army that people think about the most when they're building their armies. For me personally, I'm always thinking about Guard because, anywhere I go, I have to deal with a couple of Guard players to try and win an event now. But Necrons are going to be the more popular army. We're going to see it wider across the meta.
Yeah.
That means you're not only going to see it on the top tables, you're going to see it in the first 3 rounds as you play through the tournament. And everyone's building tools in their list to be able to have a bit of efficiency towards them because they are just a very strong index.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you think that Necrons are going to be kind of the bellwether that people are trying to build. Yeah, there's a stat check against them so that they've got something because they know they're going to run into a Necron list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially the Catan, I think, because almost all the Necron lists are running the Catan. And that's why I think it's a bit sneaky to go under the radar with the Monolith, because I think people struggle to take their list for the Monolith compared to the Catan.
Oh, I don't know. There's so many. It's a bit of a vehicle meta at the moment. I see so many vehicles out there that I wonder whether people are going to be teching up to take out vehicles, and if so, are the monoliths just going to be great big targets sitting there with a great big X on them?
T13 though is a massive breakpoint in terms of taking damage. Saying that, you might be right. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of Eldar players run 3D cannons now. The Monolith itself has strength 14 guns, so
yeah.
Maybe there are a lot of tools out there to kill the Monoliths as well.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, Vic. If I don't get on very well with the list I'm taking, I'll use your list the next time I go to an event, which will be the Battlefield Birmingham.
Oh, perfect. You know what? This list is so good for Battlefield Birmingham terrain.
I think it is. And there's a 2-day Battlefield Birmingham event that I'm going to, which is a few weeks before the first Glasshammer Super GT they're holding in Birmingham. Are you going to go to that, do you think?
Oh, unfortunately, I have a ticket, but I have to go away on holiday.
Oh, you have to? Well, never mind.
I have to. Unfortunately, I have to choose to go on holiday instead of playing Warhammer.
Well, I'm beginning to feel that you're going to try and avoid me now because I'd like to think that I've terrified you, but unlikely as it is. Vic, look, I'm going to draw it to a close. Thank you very much. I'm going to go away and think about what you've said. I'm sure that all of our listeners are going to look at that and go, 2 monoliths? He's gone completely mad. And yet, I bet you we start seeing them. And I think you can rightly say that it was your list that you were ahead of the curve.
Oh,
and whoever thought that you would say that about a Necron list?
Oh, good times, man. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Thanks very much, Vic.
Cheers.
So it turns out that somebody who's a lot more competitive than me has an entirely different Necron list to one I've been thrashing myself over for the last 3 months. Interesting. I do have all the models though, so I might actually give that a try at a competition we have coming up. But I'm sticking with the list that I challenged Vik with to see what happens at the event I have coming up on Sunday at the Walsall Warlords. So we'll see what happens then. For those that don't know, Vik is one of the best players in the country. Aeldari expert, although I've seen him use other things. He is a member of Team Ignite, one of the best teams in the country. And he runs a fantastic podcast along with his best friend, David Gaylard, called Fireside 40K. And I would definitely go and see that if you can. And I will write a link to it down below. So I'm tired out now. Thank you for listening, if you have been. And in the meantime, see you on the ice.